call Stuart Stevenson, 8 minutes, Minister.
Thank you very much indeed, Presiding Officer. And let me say, I think it's been a pretty good debate with a great deal of ground covered, one way or another. And it's clear in my remarks I will not be able to address every detail that everyone's has raised today. But be assured that we will look at the debate afterwards, and if it's appropriate, we'll write to people with matters that I don't manage to cover in my 8 or so minutes. Just picking up a few things, Des McNulty made some reference, for example, to Baillieston Newhouse and wanting that in the NPF. That would, of course, delay that project, but we want to get the planning issues associated with that dealt with on a shorter timescale than the planning document that the NPF is. But at the end of the day, communities who have issues with transport interventions of whatever nature have an absolute right in the planning system to make their views known, to make sure that their issues are dealt with. I very much welcome in particular Des McNulty's acceptance that the Minister doesn't have the money to do everything. I think a Minister of whatever political complexion will always find themselves in that place. There is a genuine issue that Ministers always have to engage in coming to the priorities for what things will be spent on. And the STPR is primarily about identifying key priorities. Let me just turn to the West of Scotland strategic rail enhancements. A number of people, Sandra White, for example, referred to the work that's going on between the Scottish Government and SPT. I think that work is going well. We are looking to have a Project 24 delivery plan by the summer, and the work is indeed going well. It is genuinely important that we understand the long-term implications, because it isn't just about the stations. It's actually about the network capacity, particularly to the south of Glasgow Central. And there are a whole range of projects, some initiated by ourselves, others by previous administrations, that are going to load into that capacity, reduce the number of paths that are available for further updates. So we do need to make sure that we could choose to take the short-term fix, but that will create long-term problems. And I think it's important that the constructive dialogue that's going on continues. Mr. McNulty.
I'm grateful to the member for taking the implementation. Would he accept that, well, station improvements and Fastlink and some parts of Crossrail could actually be achieved in advance of the Commonwealth Games? Crosslink itself as a scheme is unlikely to be in place before the Commonwealth Games comes to Glasgow.
Minister.
The interventions we're looking at are not interventions that will happen in a short space of time. They are ones that will happen in a long space of time, and of course have to, as I made comment in my opening remarks, take account of high-speed rail as well, because we need somewhere that's effective for that to land when it arrives in the west of Scotland. I think it was Mr McNulty also made the point that car use in the west of Scotland must not rise. Climate change issue. Glasgow, of course, is one of the lowest number of cars per household. My recollection, I'm prepared to be corrected, is it's 47 per 100. And of course, in many of the socially deprived areas, one of the first aspirational things people wish to do as their circumstances improve is acquire a car. We've got to capture these people for public transport rather than have that rise, and I absolutely recognise that. But let's underestimate the nature of the challenge that there is on that. The different tiers have to work it out together. That's local authorities and central government. Gavin Brown, as others did, highlighted the A82 as a key part of the west of Scotland transport infrastructure, and indeed the north of Scotland transport infrastructure as well. It is actually the road which has very nearly on our major roads the highest killed and seriously injured rate in Scotland on our major roads. In the top 20, it really comes in at number 1, as a reworking of the numbers I gave in an answer to John Scott some months ago would show. So therefore we are very much focused on that. But of course, road engineering is only one way we reduce deaths on our roads. about 2/3 are down to drivers and 1/3 could be attributable to roads. There was also mention by Gavin Brown of 6 trains an hour between Edinburgh and Glasgow. Well, that's actually only the Falkirk High. We're looking at 13 trains an hour when you take all the various routes. And I'm not sure that prioritisation has anything to do with whether projects come in on time and on budget. I think that's a different discipline, but we'll look at that. Robert Brown, of course, focused on Dalmarnock. In his intervention later in the debate, he asked us to look at financing it. The motion is a bit more prescriptive, I say. So I say to him what we are, because we're still having the discussions, we will abstain on his amendment, but vote for the motion whether amended or not, thus reflecting the fact that we are not yet in a position to be committed, but we have absolute sympathy with the point that's being made. Longer trains have been talked about in a variety of options. I think Jackie Bailey made the point. We're looking at 23-metre trains, coaches which have greater capacity. We're looking at up to 8 coach trains. So we are making the changes that will increase capacity. Incidentally, there is already a train between Helensburgh and Edinburgh. It does, however, leave Edinburgh at 4:45 in the morning and is a seat on the sleeper. So I think the Airdrie-Bathgate line will perhaps benefit those commuters who wish to travel at more normal hours, and I think that's well worth doing. Incidentally, it's not yet I really won't have time, I'm sorry. It's not quite 4 decades since men landed on the moon. That will be in July 2009. 3% growth on sorry, I'm a geek, presiding officer, and I just can't help it. 3% growth in the rail network, I think, grossly understates the growth actually we've seen in recent years. So we have to be very conscious of that. Water taxes in the Clyde, we need to get the balance right here, because actually the CO2 cost of a passenger mile on water is the highest of all transport modes. So we need to make sure that when we put people on the water, it reduces the overall length of the journey to balance that higher cost. But, nonetheless, the principle of what's been said is good. Can I congratulate Stuart McMillan on his very active engagement with the local interests on the A78. Patrick Harvey made various points about transport. In particular, I'd just like to make the point, one of the things I hope the RTPs will do over the next while is work very hard to make sure bus lanes are better enforced. That will deliver, at relatively low cost, terrific benefits. For Bill Aitken, I think regulation, we have the powers in statutory bus partnerships. I think there's options we should go there. And for Jackson Carlott, we are looking at hard shoulder running. There are significant
I'm afraid
safety
the Minister's
problems,
time is up.
And thank you, presiding officer.